Hey there guys, it's Philly here at Fidelity Factory. Find me on Twitter at PowerPhil1, and today I'm just going to go through a video on how you can do some error checking on different fields. So that when you're working on a form, and let's say you leave out a field, so I'm going to just put in my name, but I'm not going to have selected my title, and I hit submit. I'm getting an error here. It's highlighting in red, and something popped up there and told me I got an error, so maybe I'm going to go fill this in. Or maybe I forget the bottom one and I hit submit. Once again, I get a little notification up here saying there's an error in my request. Oh, and I can see this border's highlighted in red and a little bit thicker. Eventually, I'll get it right, I'm sure, I hope. And if I've got everything in, your information has been submitted. So today we're going to look at how you build something like that, where you check to make sure all the fields are not blank, and today we're focusing specifically on blank checking. So we're going to check all fields are not blank before sending off a submission. So I'm going to clear off this and clear out the code and come back with a span new one. So I'm after deleting out some of the code that I had in already, so now we're back to pretty much a blank slate here. Stuff that I've kept in is, well, there's no longer any error checking on these fields. So if I leave these as blank and I hit submit, it says my information has been submitted. So it's not figuring out that there's anything wrong with my submission. So let's just look through what's in on these fields right now. So in on my title field, let's see what's in on the items. And I've got Mr., Mrs., and Mrs. Yeah, 3 options there. And in on my name, there's nothing really going on here. The name is a text input, field, and there's just nothing going on it. And down on the submit button, I've got a little bit left in on the submit button. The only thing I've got is when we submit our information, when it's unselected, when we select our button, it just notifies you that your information has been submitted. So absolutely no error checking, nothing like that. So first thing we're going to do is start building in some of that error checking. So I'm going to put in two variables to record, let's say, if there's an issue with either of these. So one will be like, let's say, called var title blank error, and one will be called var name blank error. So when I hit submit, I want to check, are these errors, do these errors exist, are they true or false, let's say. So I'm going to start off with an update context, and we're going to start off with our title field. So I'm going to update a var, and I'm going to call it var title blank error. You can call it whatever you want. This name makes sense to me, and I'm going to update context, put in my colon there, and here, well, we could put in true or false, but we need an if statement. So here I'm going to put in an if statement. I'm going to go to the next line. Just put in my if statement, because I want it so that if that field there, which is my drop down, and it's called DRP title, and hopefully we get a title selector, if that, our DRP title selector, actually is blank. So what I actually really want is if is blank. So I'm going back before that, and I'm going to wrap it in is blank, and I've got my bracket in the wrong place. But if is blank, my DRP title selector dot, and it's going to want selected. So I was surprised there when it didn't appear up straight away in my drop down list. Dot selected. If that's blank, then I'm going to set my error to true. Otherwise, I'm going to set my error to false. Easy. Now something I've got here is off, and it's because I need to put in an extra bracket in here, because my if statement needs to close up there. And now I'm setting, is my var title blank error being set to true, or is it being set to false? So I'm going to close off that and put in my semicolon out here. something's still a little bit off with this, and it's actually because I've closed this off too soon. I've closed off my whole if statement too soon. I need to put in my bracket right about here, I think. Now our red lines are gone away, and we can now set our error to true or false. One thing that's a little bit awkward here, we still don't have a whole lot of logic, so if I hit submit, well, it's still not telling me a whole lot. So one thing I don't like about these little pop-ups, the success or failure little notifications, they can be kind of hard to get rid of sometimes when you're trying to test. So now what I want to do is actually have something maybe to check this. So what I sometimes do is I put in a label. I'm just going to put this label here. I'm going to put a little border on it so I don't lose it on the screen. Put a little label and call it var. And we only really have one var, so it's var title blank error. And this, once we put that, we'll be able to see, well, is it working correctly? Is it recognizing that our title is blank or not? So right now it's true because our last submission we left it as blank. But now if I do it this time, hopefully that'll update to false. And it did, because our title is now filled in. And if we go back and empty it out again, it's true, because that error is now true. So that's a really useful little way to do it. And we're going to do the same thing for the name field as well. So let's go back down. And all this is happening on the onSubmit button rather than on these two fields, which is kind of interesting because it looks like it'd be entirely on these two fields. It's actually on the onSubmit button. So that was I'm going to put in a little comment just above it to keep track of things. So this is my title error creation. And now down below, we're going to make our name error creation. The very same way. Well, actually not the very same way, because our name is actually a different kind of field, because our name is just a text input field. This was a drop down field. There is a slight difference in what you end up doing between those two. But once again, we're going to go with an update context. And this time I'm going to call it var name blank error. Var name blank error. Put in my colon there, and I'm going to put in an if. This time I'm going to go is blank, and our name field is called just txt name input. Hopefully you'll recognize it there. And that's pretty much, I'm almost certain, all I need for that. If that is blank, well, then I'm going to set the item to be true or false if it's not. And close that, and close that, and close that. What's interesting is for the drop down we needed a dot selected, and for the text field we don't, because it's just the text field. And this is one of the scenarios where labeling all your items on the screen becomes essential, because you don't want to be going through, let's say, text box underscore 1A, text box underscore 2B or something like that. You want them to be nicely named so that you can figure out what's going on here if you're looking back through it. So now I'm actually going to copy this little label that we had as our kind of our error checker. This is actually going to be our name blank error. So let's select that. So now we should be able to check which one of these is working correctly, if our errors are updating. So let's say if I put in Mr. here, well, my error is false up here and it's true down here because this is empty. But if I put in ABC down here, well, now I've got two falses because neither of these are an error. So now we know that our logic is working right. Now we can start kind of pushing other ideas in here. So now let's start with getting our borders red on these two fields if there's an error. So I'm going to get rid of these two. I don't think I need these anymore. I know my logic's working correctly. So let's say on this field here, our title field, if we've got an error, I want my border color to be red. So right now under my property of border color. It's this purple color I set at the start. But now I'm going to put in an if. And I'm going to say if var, we only have two variables right now, so if var title blank error, so if we've got a var title blank error, then I'm going to want it to be red. Otherwise, I'm happy with that purple color. Easy. And I'm going to do the same for name down below. I'm going to go to border color, and I'm going to say if bracket and var name blank error. Well, then it's going to be red. If we've got an error, I want it to be red. Otherwise, it'd be that nice purple color. Now, one thing as well is I don't have to say var name blank error is equal to true. I don't have to put in the equals true. The way it reads the statement is if this name blank error is true, then red, otherwise purple. Which is great. Now we're going to have a little bit more information. So now when I get rid of that and I hit submit, you can see that little red line there. The only thing is it's a little bit thin. So what I tend to do on these error checking items is I try and thicken the border as well. So the very same way on both of these, I'm going to go right now on that title field. I'm going to go if var title error, title blank error. I'm going to make my border 4. Otherwise it can be 1. Because then it'll really stand out. It gives that really thick kind of border so that you can clearly see that there's an error. And same down here. If var name blank error, well then I'm going to want it to have a border of 4. Otherwise, give me a border of 1. Now that's really clear when I hit that. Oh, I've got an issue there. I've left something blank. Oh, and it's very easy to tell where is the issue. So if I've got, let's say, my name filled in here, I can clearly see this. And it's obviously a lot more effective when we've got a page full of fields like that. Now the last thing that's still maybe not great is I've got that green bar popping up at the top that says your information has been submitted, which obviously is false. I don't want it to be submitted while we've got this error. So on my submit button down here, also for the purpose of this video, no information is actually being submitted anywhere. It's not going anywhere. All I'm doing is putting in this. But in place of maybe that notification, you might put in a patch statement to write your information to SharePoint, to CDS, wherever. But for now, all I want is really just to demonstrate the error checking. So now I don't want to do that if there's an error. So what I do is I put in an if statement, and I'm going to go if, I'm going to say if my var name blank error. So if I've got my name is blank, or if my var, I'm using those two straight lines for my if or statement, my title is blank. If either of those things are true, then why don't we put in a slightly different notification? Why don't we do I'm going to put in a little comment here, a failure notification. So that we'll know that this didn't send. So I'm going to put in a notify, same as below. Notify, and there is an error. Just going to keep it nice and simple, and I can close that off, put that there. As it is, it'll come up in a gray box, but if I put in a little comma here and I put in my notification type error, it's going to come up in a red box, which I kind of like. It kind of differentiates things. Now I've got my if statement, and if there's an error, it's going to do this. Now what I need before closing that off is I need to put in a comma, because it's going to do this, comma, or else do this. We're also after adding a little bit, so we need to put in an extra closing bracket down here. But now when we've got an error, like we do right now, when I hit submit, we get that there is an error across the top. And you can see it's the title. However, if I fill this in, miss, and I hit submit, well, your information has been submitted. There's this nice green bar at the top. Let's get rid of this and hit submit. and there is an error. So hopefully that helps you. I'm probably more of a fan of the red border on the field than this notification at the top. But hopefully that kind of helps you get an idea on how you can maybe put some error checking into your apps to make sure that everything's formatted correctly before submitting. Now all we looked at today was looking at blank fields, but there is also other ways to error check. We can make sure that, let's say, a certain field is an email, or a certain field is just digits, or it's formatted in the correct way for a postal code or phone number. And I'm going to look at that in a later video. But for now, that was a video on error checking for blank fields. Hopefully that was helpful. You can catch me at PowerFill1 on Twitter, and I will see you guys next time.